a Protestant martyr, a famous bloody footprint, and touchful ghosts are abundant here at Smithills Hall. Smithills boasts a catalogue of paranormal phenomena, so let's go into the unknown. Welcome all to another mysterious insight into the peculiar sightings and goings-on here in the northwest. This week takes us to Smithills Hall in Bolton. We shall discover the ghosts that still live here, but also explore its legendary past. For the next half hour, we'll be introducing you to some of the most notorious ghosts and unexplained activity between these ancient walls. And I'll be also sending 3 of my paranormal investigators out onto the road to report back from some of the most mysterious locations in the northwest, all of which are open to the general public. Every week we'll be based in one of the region's most haunted hotspots, and today's episode finds us in Smithills Hall in Bolton. Smithills is one of Lancashire's oldest manor houses, standing proudly in restored formal gardens and is set against a backdrop of majestic moors. Smithills Hall dates back to the 14th century, and certainly a portion of this building stood in the times of Shakespeare. But let's make our way now to the chapel. Although it was rebuilt after a fire in 1856, a chapel stood on this site where the family would worship. It still retains some of the original Tudor glass. 800 years of history have provided events that can be recalled through legends. And the very rooms in which we now stand, there's been a chapel here since Saxon times. It's also believed to be extremely haunted. The chapel will be a place for quiet contemplation and reflection, a place to come and pray in times of stress. The earliest record of habitation on the site is 1335, when William de Radcliffe built the Great Hall, which is a typical Lancashire fortified manor house. It was during the 16th century that the hall was passed on by marriage to the Bolton family, and it was during this era, dating from 1524 to 1580, that the hall achieved its paranormal notoriety. Most old houses and halls have a distinct history, including that of its previous tenants, and events that embedded their mark in it, literally, but we'll find out more about that later.
We've seen a number of strange things. For example, we've had one of our volunteers who was getting ready for visitors and went into the chapel before the hall had opened and came out and said, "There's a gentleman in there kneeling at the front. I think we perhaps ought to let him stay." He thought he was a member of the chapel congregation. But when they went back to check on him, there was nobody there. The doors were all locked and the visitors weren't in the hall.
A priest and a grey lady have been seen praying in the chapel, and there have been several apparitions witnessed in this part of the hall. Our next location is just along this passageway, but let's stop here, because only a few weeks ago, one of the guides at the hall experienced a most unusual incident.
I've been a guide at Smithills for 6 months now and not had any experiences until about 2 weeks ago. I was walking down the passageway leading to the church and I seemed to go through something that was like an invisible net. I went cold and tingly fashion, and as I went through it I took about 3 paces and turned round to watch the people coming behind me. The first lady came through, she shrugged her arms and went, "Ooh!" And when she came through, I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I've just gone through something cold." I said, "Well, so have I," but I didn't tell anybody.
We'll move next into the George Marsh rooms and discover the mark he left in this building. But first, let's join Jeanette Lanz-Bergin as she discovers the St Winifred's healing well in North Wales.
Over 1,300 years ago, on this very spot, a miracle was said to have occurred, and the story is still as famous today as the very day it originated. On visiting this settlement in the early 7th century, a young prince by the name of Caradoc saw a pretty young girl called Winifred and started making advances towards her. Winifred rejected and immediately ran towards the nearby church. Caradoc, furious for being treated in such a way, chased after her and cut off her head with a sword. The head rolled down the hill towards the church, and Winifred's uncle, Biuno, was just leaving the church, and on realising what had happened, cursed Caradoc, so he fell dead and melted away. Biuno then lifted up the head, wrapped it in his cloak, and returned to the Mass, where he asked the people to help him with their prayers for Winifred. He then rejoined her severed head to her body, and she at once revived, bearing only a red thread-like mark around her throat. A well was built on the spot where Winifred's head fell, and people believed in the Middle Ages that its water had a curative quality. St Winifred's healing well is situated in the village of Holywell, North Wales. Holywell literally taking its name from the legendary Holy Well. The current well crypt was built around 1500 AD and probably took 10 or 15 years to complete. It is unique, having no other parallel anywhere in Europe, and it's a masterpiece of late perpendicular architecture. It takes the form of an almost square crypt built in the steep hillside. In the centre, the spring rises through the star-shaped basin before flowing into the rectangular bathing pool. It is believed that before the crypt was erected, the spring stood unsupported, maintaining its stature by sheer force of water alone. The well is to this day renowned for its healing properties, and people come from all corners of the globe to apparently relieve themselves of their mental and physical hardships. Alongside the 30,000 visitors each year, it has also attracted some of the most famous names in history. And the well is open all year round, welcoming people of all faiths and backgrounds to pass 3 times through the water, and apparently all your ailments could be cured. Now all that's left for me to do is sort out this agonising back of mine. St Winifred's Well is situated in the centre of Holywell in North Wales. Entry is 60p or less per person.
This room is the George Marsh room, which is also known as the Green Hall. George Marsh was the son of a farmer, born in the nearby village of Dean way back in 1515. When King Edward VI became king in 1547, George studied the New Testament and became a preacher. When the king died some 6 years later, Queen Mary sought to re-establish her old faith, the Roman Catholic faith, thus making George a victim of her persecution along with other reformers. It was here, in this very room, that Marsh was captured during those predominantly Catholic times. He was brought to the hall by its owner, a magistrate called Mr. Barton, and was accused of preaching false doctrines. Marsh refused to recant his Protestant beliefs. However, he made a stand for his beliefs, but was tried and found guilty of heresy. It's said that during his interrogation, he became so angry that he stamped his foot down as a mark of his faith. George Marsh, you will declare that you will convert your faith to Catholicism. If I am true to my faith, God shall leave his mark. I will not give up my beliefs and my religion. You will have to burn me alive at the stake. Marsh stamped his foot to show the injustice of his accusers. He was then imprisoned at Chester, where he was sentenced for heresy and burnt at the stake on the 24th of April 1555. The depression in the flag miraculously appeared, and it's said that after George's death, his spectre could be seen to wander through the hall. Other legends suggest that members of either the Barton family or the Ainsworth family removed the slab with the footprint and hid it in the garden. Guess what happened next? Yes, this act caused disturbing poltergeist activity. After a period of time, it had to be replaced in order to get rid of the strange occurrences. Legend states that the footprint is said to become blood wet on the anniversary of his martyrdom. The Green Hall is large, unevenly floored, and to many people has a malevolent atmosphere to it. Not many will venture in here. Coincidentally, the ghost of George Marsh has been known to haunt this room, and reputably the chapel, the stairs, and the shop. It's not just the ghost of Protestant martyrs that haunt Smithills Hall. These rooms are home to a ramshackle variety of ghosts. We'll meet them after the break. A number of visitors have witnessed a different type of event here in the hall. Now, what lies at the top of these stairs, or more importantly, what is on the stairs? A number of people have experienced the most unusual event on these stairs. Whilst leaving the bar room to go up to the solar room, they've had their bottoms pinched. They've turned round and there's been no one there. Who is the phantom bottom pincher?
In the bar room upstairs, a little girl has been seen. She was seen peeping from behind a screen, and she was described as having very blonde, curly hair. And she was seen by a school teacher and two children who were on a school visit. And the school teacher found it so frightening that apparently she went home and had nightmares and couldn't sleep afterwards. We haven't seen her since, but I'm quite sure that people have felt her presence.
These two rooms are known as the Bower and the Solar Room. They were added in the 15th century as private quarters by the de Radcliffe family. The upstairs room, known as the Solar Room, was a bedchamber, but was also used by the ladies to retire, whilst down here in the Bower Room, the Lord could discuss the running of the hall in private. The lower room was intended for the private use of the Lord and his family, away from the servants and staff. A small room, possibly a dressing room or a maid's bedroom, was added onto the Solar soon after it was built. The ghost of a little girl was seen behind this screen, but she's not the only ghost that haunts these very rooms.
Sometimes you catch things out of the corner of your eyes and you're not quite sure what you've seen. And we had one lady visitor who was standing at the bottom of the stairs, and she felt quite sure she'd seen a figure move across the top of the stairs. And of course, when she got to the top of the stairs, there was no one there.
How often she has gazed from castle windows all, and watched the daylight passing within her captive wall, with no one to heed her call.
Now it's time to join Andrew McHugh, who tells us not to put your trust in the devil.
Cast your mind back long before Brookside disappeared from our screens, centuries before Sergeant Pepper's, and eons before Tranmere Rovers. Merseyside was home to people who worship the sun, stars and the moon. Visiting Bidston Hill on the Wirral, you'll find strange carvings in the rocks and the earth. But little is known of their origins, and mystery shrouds their purpose. Were they maps of prehistoric landscape, ancient fertility symbols, or perhaps the whole of Bidston Hill is an ideal location for contacting the higher planes? In 1899, one particular local scoundrel and hellraiser decided to test the theory and attempted to summon the devil. Over a century ago, Oliver Milton became rich beyond his wildest dreams due to a large inheritance from his uncle. But this power-crazy troublemaker was still not happy and decided he would cash in his soul for fame, wealth and celebrity. Oliver and his friends visited Bidston Hill and stood on the sandstone rock which lies amongst the carvings. Materialising on the stroke of midnight, the devil is said to have taken the form of a sharp-dressed man in black with fiery eyes. Granting all their wishes in return for lifelong allegiance and that small matter of their souls, the group are rewarded with all their heart's desires, including money and beautiful girls. As the years passed, reminders of what happened that fateful night came to the group at increasingly regular intervals, including pitchfork-shaped birthmarks found in their newborn and violent illnesses caused if they were to set foot near a church. It is said that Oliver summoned the devil once more, screaming at him, "I reject you, Lucifer." But the devil, perhaps not finding Oliver's betrayal amusing, reduced him to a pile of ashes. So, does the spirit of Oliver Milton haunt the hillside? And can the devil and other deities be contacted from here? Walking amongst the historic buildings on Bidston Hill, you'll feel as though you're stepping into the past. Maybe this is a perfect meeting place for spirits travelling between our world and theirs. Bidston Hill is accessible to the general public all year round and is well signposted from the village of Bidston, just off Junction 1 off the M53.
Although we've discovered the apparitions of George Marsh, let's now make our way into the Victorian rooms. This is known simply as Colonel Ainsworth's room. It's also the scene of some rather strange goings-on.
In the Colonel Ainsworth's room, there are glasses on the table which we leave upside down to avoid the dust getting into them. During the night, they're locked up. The doors are locked, the sensors alarms are on, and they're left in that condition. In the morning, occasionally when you open the doors, the glasses have turned over. Indeed, in one occasion, I was leading a party through there, and we'd just finished talking about the room. All the glasses were in place, and I escorted them into the next room. I looked back into the room to see if I'd mislaid any of the guests, and the glasses had moved within 30 seconds of moving into the other room.
When the Ainsworths obtained the estate in 1801, they wanted to adapt it, providing comfortable living quarters for them as well as to cater for their guests. Although it is very much a man's room, staff and visitors have witnessed a strong scent of flowers. One evening during a tour that was taking place in this room, 3 visitors to the hall smelt a strong smell of perfume. Now, the ropes here have swung mysteriously by themselves. Could one of the Ainsworths be actually haunting this very room? It seems the ghosts here at Smithills have never really been laid to rest. Perhaps Caroline Hacking has something they may find useful.
The tiny village of Capel Garmon near Betsy houses a secret from over 4,000 years ago.
When the day is done, down to earth then sinks the sun, along with everything that was lost and won. When the day is done.
In the early Bronze Age, between 2500 and 1900 BC, around the time when Stonehenge was constructed, burial chambers were a must-have accessory among the important heads of Britain's varied religious cults. Now, the leaders of the early white society were buried according to religious rituals in very elaborate and specially designed tombs. And the discovery of these graveyards is a valuable indicator into the early racial makeup of our early European ancestors. And one of the finest examples in Britain is right under my feet.
When the night is cold, some get by, but some get old, just to show life's not made of gold. When the night is cold.
Capel Garmon burial chamber is sited in a location with a beautiful view of Snowdonia. Although where I'm sitting here appears to be the main entrance, it was actually opened up in the 19th century when the tomb was used as a stable for the local cattle. The original entrance was located on the southern side, where a passage leads to chambers on either side, giving the structure a T-shape. Originally, these chambers would be covered with these massive capstones, but today only one still survives. Upon their death, the high and mighty religious leaders would be brought into the tomb via the side entrance. Now, once inside here, they would be laid to rest in the main chamber, wrapped in their finest cloth. It is believed that the organisation of the stones and the main tomb passages were aligned so that the rising sun of the winter solstice would shine down on them, representing the start of the lengthening of the days and the start of the celebrated growing season. The burial chamber is located just east of the tiny village of Capel Garmon and is signposted off the country lane. If you visit, please be courteous and respect the surrounding farmland.
Next to the Victorian rooms, we have the cafe and shop area. Bet you thought you'd be safe here, but no. Smithills has it all. Several ghostly incidents have taken place right here.
One morning I was in the shop and I went to a mirror in the shop, Puget mirror, and I was applying my makeup. And as I was doing this, I saw a figure of a man at the doorway with bushy white hair and a dark suit. So I turned round towards him and I said, "Can I help you?" And he disappeared. So I went to the gentleman on the door called Tom and I said, "There's a man in the shop." And he said, "There's nobody in the hall but yourself and me, and the hall hasn't opened yet." So this happened to me 3 times. Once he was on near the banisters and another time at the door. So I haven't done my makeup at the mirror since then.
The gift shop and cafe area used to be the dining room of the Entwistle. Perhaps one of them actually haunts this very area. What we do know is this ghost is joined by another one. They both haunt the same vicinity. Perhaps this ghost has a liking to this part of the hall.
Recently, one of the guides, when looking into the gift shop, saw at the end of the room a figure crouched down, dressed in black, which could have been George Marsh.
If you want to visit Smithills Hall to see the famous footprint, it can be found on Smithills Dean Road in Bolton. Just follow the brown signs. It is open all year round except Mondays. Maybe you will see the glasses move in the green room. Well, that's all for tonight, I'm afraid. But do join us next week for another frightening look into the unknown. Good night.